Good morning. I feel so honored to be sitting here before you. Um, I just want to give you a little bit, well, the first question I'm going to
Yeah.
ask is, how has your background prepared you for the integration of technology in education? And I'm just going to answer that question first.
Yeah.
Um, I am a product of the New York City public school system. I'm also a teacher. I survived Bush and Bloomberg, which totally decimated the public school system in New York. My daughters, I have twin daughters. They graduated from college. And so so it's been a journey, because as a parent, fighting to get quality education, you have to actually fight for a quality education. So I see it from all different sides. I've been teaching for the past 25 years, and I've taught in some of the worst schools in New York. So I'm on the ground. I'm in the field, and it's a war. It's really, really serious. So, but I teach computer science, AP computer science, and computer graphics, augmented reality. I've developed a curriculum in spite of working with racist teachers in the system. So it's, I have scars. I just don't kind of visually wear it. But so now, in being introduced to the blockchain technology, I feel that, it's going to allow me the flexibility to create something outside of this school system, which I feel is designed to be a prison. And so schools, students are, especially young black men, it's designed to squash and to strip. But also teaching educational technology, I'm going to be a little bit kind of rebellious here. There has to be a balance, because I've been teaching it. Basically, we came into schools thinking that the technology was going to save us. But what I found is just looking at the screen too much kind of sucks ambition from your mind. So we have to learn how to balance this. And so that's what I do in my curriculum. So I combine it with art. I infuse math, English standards in it, and I've been getting great results. So.
All right. Yeah, very good. When you talk about children, I think one of my past experience as well, getting into education and technology, was helping kids in remote places to learn how to use a normal computer. And this is something I was doing with an organization from MIT. I don't know if anyone has heard about One Laptop Per Child. So 10 years ago in Kigali, that's where I met the team. And then I volunteered in the project when I was finishing my uni. I was getting my degree. And basically, One Laptop Per Child came with an amazing device, a rugged laptop that was costing about $100. And we were deploying them in remote places just to see how we could transform and empower education of children around the world. That was quite interesting for us, because as we kicked off with the deployments of laptop in remote places, we learned so many things. For example, this laptop could have a battery power for about 10 hours, but then in remote places you find there's not really electricity. So we find already it was the first challenge in terms of providing power in remote places. How do we do a complete deployment in remote places and ensure that the program will run? We needed to consider about having a solar panel installed. So that's already affected the cost, for example, of doing a deployment in a remote place. The second challenge we had was content integration in this kind of laptop, because when the laptop comes, it has two platforms. It comes with already pre-installed on contents. Some of this is from the United States curriculum, and we find there is a challenge because when kids are starting to learn using this curriculum, it's delayed them with the coursework and the curriculum in Kenya, so it doesn't really prepare them to the actual learning, prepare them to the exams, but it's provide them with some knowledge, and then they tend to fail most of the times. So we had to find what a way to work with government, because they are the main content provider in the country, and so we can license this content, develop them, and make it compatible with these kind of devices. Some of the challenge we had, of course, was how the platform was developed and the capacity the laptop could handle in terms of content and the space the memory was providing. So we had to give a lot of feedback to the organization and see how they can improve some of these versions. So the support gang was quite helpful to us in terms of making iterations on the device and see how we could be able to really have content running on this platform. So over those years, we were able to have the Kenyan content or the Kigali content as well, customized and up and running in these laptops. And right now, what we're also trying to do is to see how we can provide internet connectivity in these remote places, because you find every 4 years, most of these government trying to refine the curriculum and going back to the school again to trying to install and configure the new content. It's really costly. So we are trying to work with local company to see how we can provide an affordable internet connection so that they're able to have access to education.
The next question is, how can blockchain disrupt education, and what needs to be disrupted?
Yeah, so I'll also give a bit of my experience and how I came across Bitcoin and blockchain technology. So 6 years ago, me and my partner John were running an e-commerce platform, and we were quite successful in the first years in terms of gaining traction. We had many retailers listing their products on our platform. We had many partnerships. One of the challenges we had was how to accept payments on this e-commerce platform. Here, all of you guys are familiar with Amazon, and you use your credit card, Visa, debit card to purchase, or you can easily have PayPal integrated on your Amazon accounts. We also had the same kind of integration with our e-commerce platform, and we promoted this so well. But one of the things we realized in Africa, not everyone could afford to have a debit card or credit card. Not everyone had a PayPal account. So when we came across Bitcoin in 2013, we saw that Bitcoin had so much potential in Africa than anywhere else around the world, because not everyone had access to those payment systems. And now we attempted to work with the telecom, because in Kenya, again, everyone talked about M-Pesa. You find 70% of the population at least uses M-Pesa to make different kind of payment. And for us, this was a very good opportunity to partner with the big telcos and see how we can integrate M-Pesa on our platform and have everyone set up and they can purchase easily product on our platform. And this kind of metrics or traction could allow us to raise money and scale our e-commerce platform. But it was challenging for us because it really allowed us to understand that any centralized financial system is not open to innovation. So when we saw blockchain was decentralized, for us it was a very good opportunity, because one of the things that was quite interesting for us is if we wanted to scale globally, for example, we could, and there's good adoption of Bitcoin, we don't need to go back again if you want to scale, let's say in South Africa, in Kampala or Kigali. We don't need to start the process again of talking to the telcos, understanding how their platform works. So with Bitcoin, it's just one-time integration, and everyone around the world could be able to really integrate this kind of platform. So this was quite interesting for us. We started doing a lot of research, understanding how the platform works, and then we didn't want to focus on the hype about talking just Bitcoin blockchain, but we wanted to start also building application and use cases. But one of the things we realized was there was not so many talents of people we could work with in Africa. So we had to find a way we could start also doing a lot of capacity building, and that the training you're talking about. So we find there's a lot of opportunity in the future. Of course, blockchain, it's a very new technology, but there's a need for so many of us to really learn how it works. We believe that the economy of the future is data-driven, and blockchain allows us to do a lot of things in terms of automation, for example, in terms of building smart contracts, and the concept behind it will work for so many businesses in the future. So for us, we believe it's an opportunity for techpreneurs to learn about this.
Well, for me, it's the disruption. I want to disrupt the school to prison pipeline. And it's like we've been at this point, like begging this country to, looking for validation that we need to be educated, and they're going to give it to us. It's just being in the system this long, it's not going to happen. So if it's going to happen, it has to be us. And so I feel that I want to use blockchain to actually, because I teach the career technology education, so it's like the old vocational schools where you get certifications, just a way to create a database so that employers can see that students have, passed through, have obtained certain certifications, and also have, like, they have their, passed certain courses or gotten a high school diploma. But outside of the traditional setting, because I don't feel, like, I usually take a poll. Most of my students feel that the school is oppressive. And my school isn't, the school I'm working in currently isn't really a bad place, but they just feel that the structure is just so limiting. So I really feel like creating an alternative environment, and I'm in the talks with someone from the Carter G. Woodson Project, and he came up with this idea called Communiversity, where we have tech hubs, just because he was talking before, because in Africa they have tech hubs, because they need to train people, right, to actually create software and to create these applications, and so that you can create these startups. But we don't have them here in this country, which is kind of interesting because, so you have these disenfranchised people, but there's no training centers. So that's one of my visions for blockchain. But also I'm working with this young man over here, Mwebe Shange. Did I pronounce your name? And Mark Scott, who created a coin called the Cowrie, and they're in talks with a school, Medgar Evers College, to actually create an institute. So there's talks that I'm working with, developing their curriculum and aligning standards, ELA and math standards and career standards. The next question is, how can we incorporate Pan-African values in this educational technology environment, and why is that important?
Yeah, I think one of the things we really liked about blockchain, again, it's the global aspect. So right now, we find there's a need for all of us to collaborate and have that kind of knowledge sharing because of the way blockchain technology or the design aspect of this technology is. We spent the last few months with my partner in Asia just to understand as well how do you successfully build a protocol and make sure it's compatible with some of the resources you find in countries like Asia, and understanding, for example, why Singapore becoming very attractive to many players in the Bitcoin and ICO world. And then here we are in the United States as well, where we find there's a lot of talents, developers, engineers who are good at building blockchain applications. But then we also have challenges in Africa. We have challenges like access to internet. We have challenges with infrastructure. And right now, when you talk blockchain, you need to consider some of these challenges. For example, when you build a system here, when you look at the coin market cap, we have over 2,000 cryptocurrencies. And when you really read the white paper, you look at the technology, you find some of this has so much impact in Africa. But when you start really testing them in a local environment, you find that many aspects of this technology that really do not work for us. So we need to really consider our Pan-African, we need to really consider our context for us to build a very successful technology. And that's why we're here to see how we can collaborate with many of the players in this space and see how we can really build technologies that can work for different parts of the world.
For me, it's really using the history. Our history is so rich, and a lot of our children it's not being taught, so they don't know that science is in our blood, math is in our blood. There's a total disconnect from this. So my whole approach is to kind of heal that, create environments where, because once it's just like you said, the context is there, and history has to be, I think, infused in a curriculum so that it could be in the proper context. Because if you abstract that out, then you're there's no incentive, So students think, when they think of a tech geek, they think of like a white guy with glasses, but not knowing that this is like the binary code can be seen in Yoruba oracles, so it's like it's intrinsic. So I think all these, there has to be cultural nuances placed within the technology, because other than that, there's going to be no connection, and young children will feel like they're not connected to this. Yeah. So I think it's important for people, to actually push make it very multidisciplinary when you're teaching this. Because I think as a people, we're so multidimensional, we don't realize it. And there's so many different types of learners. So right now, if you look in the curriculum, first of all, I know teaching programming, I found out that in New York City, in geometry, they took out truth tables in the curriculum, which is logic. So how can you take logic out of the curriculum and learn programming? So they're actually doing these things by design. They do not want an educated populace in this country, not just black people, just American, period, but especially black people. So we're denied access. So this divide is growing wider and wider, and children can come to I teach AP Computer Science principles, and students, children of color will be like, no, that's too hard for me. So for me, it's just a matter, and then you'll have some students who will look at me as a teacher and say, well, if she can do it, I can do it, And because I'm naturally trained as an artist, so I had to kind of train myself to be a programmer, and which has been like a torturous journey. It's been absolute torture. And like, why do I do this for myself when I can just like go in the teacher's lounge and just relax, you know? But I'm constantly pushing this envelope because I think my journey is because I'm supposed to take people who feel that they can't do it, I have to take them through the journey to make it easy for them. Because if you're a computer scientist, you just instantly know, like most computer scientists I know talk like really, really fast. And they just assume that you just have all these concepts. But because I know how my brain works and how I run my class, like my students are teaching me certain things. So, but it's great because I'm humble. And because I'm humble, then I can teach, like I have some students that have, I taught this one girl, she has Asperger's. She had Asperger's, and she got a 5 on the AP exam. So it's just a matter of, I think, a teacher, your approach as a teacher, you know, and how you can like reach students. And so for me, my goal is to basically have a curriculum or be a teacher or train teachers so that we can teach in mass, because we have to be prepared for what's coming. Like, everybody should have the brain of a programmer right now. And I know just because, like I said, growing up, I like had this artsy kind of brain. Like I didn't know, like technical, I didn't want to learn anything technical. But I know just by learning programming, it's actually changed my life. Like I think more logically now. I see a problem, something happens, I'm like, I see options. I start seeing, okay, if I do this, then this will happen. You know, I'm seeing flow charts now. So when I talk to my students and I'm like, listen, complexity, see, this is what we do in schools. We make people feel afraid of mistakes, but in programming, errors are something that you look forward to, you know? And it's like, once you get it, there's like, as a programmer, there's this rush that you get, you feel like, wow, I'm really smart, you know? You know, I got this problem, but there'll be other problems. But, you know, it's like problems aren't bad. Problems aren't bad. And because the way this country runs is like we've been taught to the test. And so kids are afraid of making mistakes because, well, you have to be, because you make one mistake and you're out. You're in some like horrible class. So it's legitimate. But that's what's wrong with the system. So I try to like just to demystify this whole process and relax. And let like coding is almost like a meditation, you know? It's like you can just, your problems don't exist because you're like in your coding. So anyway, sorry to go on this diatribe. But it's, and I think that passion, I relate to my students, and I love to see children or just people who feel like that they're dumb or they can't get it, and when they start to get it, because it's a matter of training. So the cultural nuances are important, you know, and the fact that we can say that as a people we survived the Holocaust of enslavement, you know, you can sit down in this chair and learn this code, you know, okay. Come on, because we have to, you know, we have to get to this point. So my next question for you would be, do you think that this technology should, do you see blockchain replacing teachers? Or how do you think the effect, what should the effect be in the classroom?
Well, I think right now we are very much exposed to things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data, blockchain also. And it really, sometimes, especially when you go to Africa, it's like a threat. You know, since we got exposed to technology, when we started deploying, let's say, the one laptop per child devices, teachers were very scared because they're thinking now, since you have a fully equipped material in school, then they lose their jobs because a kid will just need to open his laptop, open lesson 1, mathematics, and the rest, and they're able to learn even without a teacher. But for us, this was wrong because they needed to understand that this is complementary. This is something that really help the kids to really more practice or learn more about what they're learning in school. And the same thing applies to things like machine learning, because when you look at what um, happening right now with AI, where the human thoughts it's now doing some of the action automatically, you find that it's very limited on what a machine can do. So you still need some human action to happen even when the machine is trying to do something. But the advantage of this is now speed up some of the processes and helping a company now to, increase in terms of revenue streams. And one of the things we do in Kenya, for example, on blockchain technology, when we do a lot of consulting with companies, because there's so much hype, so we find everyone wants to really build something on the blockchain. And for us, we normally tell them, no, not everything's supposed to be on the blockchain. So we're always trying to find that key component on the business model that's really need to be automated and will help the company to, again, increase their revenue stream. So right now, of course, Bitcoin or blockchain technology will really be something that will add more value to already existing system and will not really replace the structures. Yeah.
Well, I think there's this push, like there's some forces that want to replace teachers. You know, it's cost effective not to have a teacher. Teachers are too expensive. But I know children need people. We need human interaction, and especially people of color. We're more tactile learners. We need to interact. Like, I know some of my students, like, well, they'll say, I don't like this teacher, so I'm not doing her work. I'm like, that's insane, you know, but we have to, when we like you, when the students like you, then their minds open. So I think we have to, when we're designing, the computer is just a tool, you know, it's a tool, and I think we have to also teach children how to use it responsibly. And I tell my students, I'm like, it can be, think of the computer as it's like fire. Fire can be used to destroy a house, or it can warm a house. So we have to think in terms of ethics. But if I wasn't there to have this conversation and some robot was there doing this, of course they would like AI is something that you should, you know, pursue. I just want to open to some questions in the audience. Okay, Mwebe? No, you.
Greetings. This isn't really, it's a short comment with the education piece, looking at history as the core. I just wanted to invite everyone to look at, he's in DC, his name is Anthony Browder, and he teaches about, I think the thing about blockchain, what's great about blockchain is that we're looking for a purpose of why we should make it black. And coming from a black perspective, well, if you go and look up Anthony Browder, who's at the ikgculturalcenter.com, he'll show you the mathematical equations of how DC was created from Benjamin Banneker. These type of things where we interwove the history now makes you see for kids and even for us to say, look, I do want to get into this technology thing because it's innate, as you mentioned, in us. So I just want to put a plug for Anthony Browder, ikgculturalcenter.com. Check him out. He does the Egypt on the Potomac field trip here in DC every first Saturday of every month. So check him out.
Okay, yes, with the dreads. Yeah.
Oh, me. Hi, how are you? Well, first I want to say you're awesome. I've definitely been where you have been because I used to teach technology as well. And I've been a software engineer for almost 20 years now, but I'm also a designer. But my son, he codes for Roblox, right? He's 11 years old.
He codes for Roblox?
Yeah, he makes scenes, parts, actions, does scripting for Roblox. And just recently he started getting paid to do it. So, and that's the thing. when I've been doing, engineering all over the world, and how they do it in third world countries is they're training to work.
That's
They're
right,
training
yeah.
to make money.
Right.
They're training to go right into careers from that age. And that's what gets them interested,
That's
because
right.
they know that this is leading to work, this is leading to making money. And this is something that when I used to teach, I used to, bring that up to different programs. I'm like, we need to train them for real world applications of this and let them know that, yes, you can make money. It's just not about being a geek. It's not about sitting around. You may find yourself at age 15,
That's
you're
right.
now making money. You're now
Right.
making as much money as any other engineer that's out there that's 30, 40 years old. So that's the piece, that's a huge piece that's missing in
Right.
education, as far as I can start applying this right now. I could start doing this. I could go home and start making money.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's a big thing, and that we really, really need to enforce. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make a point, but I definitely, want folks to know that portion of it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, that's what they do in
yeah.
career and in vocational schools. I mean, where it's like you're learning this to work, and I tell my students that you can do this now. You don't have to. You can be.
In India, they're like little kids. They're 12, 13 years old, and they're already making money.
How you doing? Good morning. Good morning. You guys made points toward application of remittance and public education. So the question I actually have is about public aptitude for blockchain technology. In other words, what do we do to make it so that the public gets it? Most people, I talk to people about it, and most people, say they like it, but it goes over their heads. And so the public, a lot of people, when they saw Facebook, when they saw Twitter, they understood it just by looking at it. So how do we kind of approach and get people, especially black folks, over that barrier?
Yeah, so I think from my experience so far, what I've realized, blockchain technology, it's just any other programming or structure we've been using out there, right? It's come with new design concepts that combined maths, statistic, and all of this. And for us, we feel like the average person will still use an e-commerce platform or an application on their mobile phone without knowing what's running in the back end. The same way you use Uber, you use Airbnb. So this technology right now, we want to focus, for example, to the knowledge of people who have at least access to a computer, people who can be able to train others, because we've been approached, let's say, with countries that want to run an electoral system on the blockchain. But one of the challenges we come across is how do we train the whole electoral commission on this new technology, because you find maybe only 3 people know about this. So you find that's already a big challenge, because you need to have, let's say, 10,000 people who will deploy this system across the country to make sure the election happen in a very transparent way. And that's a challenge because most of them will not understand how this technology works. So I think right now there's still that class that really need to focus, not really say the general public. Right now, what's happening, people need to build a user-friendly distributed application, the dApps, that now everyone can be able to use. And now we find now many blockchain companies, when they're building their protocols, they're allowing now the engineers to be able to build those kind of application so that anyone can benefit from it. So that tomorrow the Airbnb can now not be owned by a centralized company, but anyone now can also have access to this technology. They can build their dApps for any kind of usage. I think that's how we see blockchain benefit to the public, to any average person. But the technology itself, the programming, we've been teaching this for so many years. It's very complex. If you're not familiar with the foundational math, the cryptography, it's really hard to get into this. So blockchain technology, let's leave this to the techie, the people who want to dive into the technology, because finding the right guys, the engineers who can build application on this, it's not easy, right? Yeah.
All right, we're gonna take 3 more questions. Make it quick.
I just wanted to answer that question. I feel that, yes, to make it user-friendly, but I also feel that the back end is important to learn, and I feel that's where the education, writing curriculum for teachers, breaking it down so that people can get it, because we need masses of people to get it, not just this little small elite. So that's what I had proposed, the community universities, to make it more local and accessible to people. So it's not just this like 5% of the great people who do the science and math, but just make it more accessible, and that's what I'm trying to develop in my curriculum. Okay.
I'll help you out. Yeah.
Okay.
Quick question about pathways. So as a former public school teacher myself, I totally get it. When you have these curriculums such as Eureka and others that are supposed to break down mathematical concepts, you're really just looking at a time issue. 180 days, school year, classroom management, behavior management. By the time you get to content and delivering those lessons, you wind up shortchanging the kids. So my question for the panel is this. You have United States mathematics and science standards. You have varying standards when it comes to the continent. If you could identify some areas that if you were to say, okay, 4 years before students walk through my door, or 4 years before candidates come to our startup, what are some of the skills that you would say are essential that kids are getting in middle school, that students new to blockchain are experiencing as freshmen in college? What are some of these concepts that they need to be exposed to now before they walk in your door?
Well, I would just say, algebra, trig, that's the core, geometry, even in English, just really developing their critical thinking skills. I think that's key. But I think one thing in this country, because we have a math and science teacher shortage, and we've had to go outside of the country, what I found that a lot of times people have really thick accents. So the children that are here in underserved schools don't understand. And plus the teachers don't have the cultural, because to teach math, you have to have some kind of cultural connection so that you can give the proper analogies. And if you can't give that, then, so now we have like this country's almost developing nation status in math and science, and that's, I think, one of the contributions, but math is definitely key.
Yeah, I think in our efforts to drive the adoption of this technology in Africa, one of the key things we've been doing is to work with educational institutions, to go to universities. We talk to them about the benefit of blockchain technology, and we see how it can benefit them. So you find most of the time, as she said, you find institutions that are not really receptive to this new concept, and the one that accepts this, they probably give us a monthly workshop in the school. And this has been quite interesting because you find if they have 6 months and we do 6 workshops, it really helps them to see how they can integrate this in the whole learning process. And right now, we are making quite a good progress because we are talking now about integrated learning, where a student is able to really go through our curriculum and combining this with what they learn in school, and then be able to be ready for a job, or be able to launch their own token, understanding how to set up a node. And this gives them some kind of economic freedom. They know they can already be making some money when they're finishing to learn this new technology. And again, when it comes to the blockchain technology, as she said, it's mostly the maths that you need to really know, because there's a lot of cryptography that plays around in learning blockchain, and then programming as well. You need to be familiar with some of the programming languages out there. So you find in Kenya, we also run some program, Scratch and robotic targeting like the young kids in primary school. So these are some of the skills that these kids they need to have when they're growing up for them to be able to play with blockchain technology in the future. Yeah.
Okay, last question right here.
Thank you guys very much. Again, I think that one of the takeaways that I let you guys know, and myself as a researcher, what I heard both of you say is that one of the issues is a paradigm. And I think from a computer science research topic, if anybody was interested, it seems that we need to somehow come up with a way to object orient the blockchain paradigm so that we could, in fact, introduce like icons with icons or nuances into these apps that are relevant to whatever target market that you're trying to target, in our case, us, right? So instead of having pictures of them, have pictures of us, and having conversations about, I don't know what they think about, but us, you know, the things that we think about, right? Doing some type of research in that area might be good for anybody who is looking to do research. And I wanted to ask a question about, the sister said her son is doing Roblox programming. When you said in the earlier, at the lower levels, they're like coming back to visit periodically, programming every now and then, is that like what's the frequency that they use? Because I'm trying to, you know, do homeschooling for my children, and I want to be able to do the same thing, but you know, you only have 180 hours in a year or what have you, 180 days to get all of this in.
So, and the question is?
Well, the question was, what was the frequency that you were doing to going back and forth teaching programming?
Teaching programming?
Well, I mean, he was saying that they were doing that in Africa.
Yeah.
Those like, you know, hit and then come back a couple months later. I don't know, what was the frequency?
Well, for the experience with the one laptop per child, you find usually when we did the deployment, we will we set up like a school lab where kids will have to do, let's say, things like lesson integration, not really focusing on programming. Programming, like the kids camps, could only happen during holidays because that's when kids are free. So every year we'll have those kid camps, and we're trying to identify those kids who are quite smart, who are able to do programming lesson and do those Scratch activities with the devices we provided them. So that will happen once a year, and then we get the best students to work with them or get them to come more often in our co-working space and work with the best engineers we have. Yeah.
I'm not gonna address the question, but I think it's almost time, and I just want to say that I really think that people should learn the back end. I think we're the innovators in this country. We created jazz, hip hop, and if we do that to blockchain, it'll be off the chain, right?
Let's